Welcome to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavel Shakras, and in today's video, we're not going to be talking about digital pianos, but we are going to be talking about acoustic pianos for the first time in what feels like a very, very long time. I just got done making the video of the comparison between the Roland FP30 versus the Roland FP30X. If you do like digital pianos and you haven't seen this video, you might want to go check that one out when you're done watching this one. It's pretty interesting. But the video and the instrument that we're going to be doing today, I think, is probably even more interesting. A while back, I picked up, brought to the studio, and reviewed a $100 Craigslist piano. Actually, I think it might have been from eBay. But a lot of people enjoyed that video, and I had quite a few comments on that video saying, you should do the same thing with a free Craigslist piano. And so that's kind of what we're doing today. I'm not going to be bringing it to the studio, but instead I'm going to be going out to check this piano out. And I'm going to be making a video about it because, like every Craigslist piano, it has a story, but I think this one might have a bit more of an interesting story than most. The pictures of it on the Craigslist ad look like it might be a little bit higher caliber than your usual free Craigslist piano. When you think of a free piano, you think of something that's, in absolutely horrible condition, but the exterior case of this actually looks really, really nice. And so I thought it would be pretty cool to go check out this instrument and do some reviews of the check out the inside, check out the outside, even play it a bit, and talk about some of its really cool features. So let's hop in the car here and let's drive to Kingsport, Tennessee, which is where this piano is located. I've recently gotten a GoPro that has the time-lapse, time warp feature, and I'm messing around with that. Let me know what you think of it. It's kind of fast. I can't really make it be a slower time-lapse, but hopefully you guys enjoy seeing the countryside of beautiful Tennessee. And once we get to the gentleman's house, we'll go check out the piano. So the instrument that I'm standing in front of, or next to, is an Allison player piano from the early 1900s. Based off of the serial number, which I'll put on screen, I found it on the soundboard of the instrument. Based on from some basic research online, it appears to have been made sometime between 1921 and 1930. So early in the 20th century was when this instrument was made, and that checks out with some other research that I've done about the Allison Piano Company. It's not a brand that I have ever heard of before until today, but after some research, what I have found out is that Allison began, like many other piano companies at the time, began in London, England, making square pianos, grand pianos, and uprights. However, towards the beginning of the 20th century, the 1900s, is when Allison phased out the square pianos, like so many others did, and they began to focus their efforts on making player upright pianos. And their upright player pianos and their normal uprights as well were actually revered as being very high quality, unusually high quality, in fact, for pianos made in London. I believe their design of the uprights, possibly not this one exactly, but some of their uprights were actually based off of the designs of Grotrian Steinweg, a legendary German builder who has their roots, or Steinway has their roots based in Grotrian Steinweg. So there's some very vague connections between Steinway and Allison, which is kind of cool. Anyways, this is a player piano, and as you can see, despite being made sometime between 1920 and 1930, it looks great. It looks really beautiful. Typically, pianos of this age will be old and beat up, and they won't look good from the outside. But from the outside, this one's beautiful. And part of the reason for that is because the majority of the piano has been refinished. And I say the majority because the owner tells me that this part right here on the fallboard may actually very well be the original finish. And that actually is entirely possible. Years ago, one of my favorite pianos that our family ever had was a J.C. Fisher from 1895. And the way the fallboard was designed is it folded in two parts. So you had one part would fold up, and then it would fold up again inside of the piano. And that part that never saw the light of day was high gloss, perfect finish, untouched. It was amazing. So it's possible that this piano has spent much of its life with the fallboard closed, with this wood never being exposed to the elements of a household or wherever the instrument was kept, and as such, this remains a perfect finish of some type of walnut wood that looks just like what you would see on a modern piano with the same type of satin wood finish. The rest of the piano, though, originally was in a little bit worse for wear, so whoever restored it and refinished it did an excellent job of refinishing it, and the rest of the piano looks just as good as this fallboard does. like the Allison logo, I can't help but mention the logos of old acoustic pianos. They always look so cool, and the Allison logo there, to me, is really, really neat. So there's a few other cool features about this instrument that I thought would be worth a mention, and one of those is, like I said, that it's a player piano. So if we open up this, it's a secret compartment, but that isn't actually all that secret, because everyone knows that the player pianos of old had the piano rolls inside. So when this piano is fully functioning, you can either pedal with a pair of pump pedals, or you can even plug the instrument in and use a motor to operate all of this mechanical machinery inside that essentially allows the piano to play itself. And a lot of different companies had their own different names for them. Pianola is a common term that was thrown around, and Allison had their own version of it, and they simply called it the Allisonola, which is really funny. So it's pretty much your standard player piano mechanism, and I'll show you some pictures of the inside. You have all of these hydraulic hoses. I don't know if hydraulic is the right word to use, but you have all of these pressurized air hoses, and you've got all kinds of gears and chains and mechanisms and machinery inside that allow the piano to play itself, which is really, really interesting. Modern player pianos, of course, are all digital with solenoids and modern technology, but there's something kind of cool about just mechanisms like this. It's really, really interesting. Pianos like this with this type of mechanism were made from around this time period all the way up, and before, but all the way up into the 1970s. We once had an Aeolian player piano from the 70s that had a very similar mechanism inside, but it didn't work as well, and it wasn't quite as well made as this instrument. Another difference between the player piano that we used to have and this one is that the bellows of this instrument have all been repaired. So the bellows are essentially these large chests of wind that allow pressurized air to form and basically make the entire system work. And usually what happens is, because the bellows are made of this flexible cloth type material, over time, I don't know why I closed that to begin with, over time the bellows will wear out, they'll get holes, and they'll lose pressure, and they'll become next to useless. However, by repairing and redoing all of the clothing around the bellows, is that the right term to use? Clothing? By redoing the bellows and rebuilding them, you can make the bellows work just as good as they did before. So all of the fabric on the bellows in this instrument appears to have been redone and restored at some point by someone in the past. And it's also likely, very likely, that someone has also gone in and repaired the rubber hosing and replaced all of that. Although some of it does show a little bit of cracking, it is about 25 years old. That's when all of the work was done. And so that also does check out. If it had the original hosing from 1920, none of it would probably be in existence. So it's very good that the hosing has been replaced too. Now, all of you are probably wondering, what does it sound like? And, well, it hasn't been tuned in 25 years, with the exception of 2 notes that we tuned here today. So I will sit down and play a little bit on it, but it won't be amazing to listen to. But I will play a couple of notes that you will be able to hear that are roughly in tune, and we can take a listen to how those sound, just to get a little bit of an idea of what the tone of this piano might be like if it was tuned. So here's the inside of the Allison piano. This is the badge on the harp that has the really cool Allison logo. You can see that the tuning pins are all original, and here is all of the original player piano mechanism, which you can see is, for 1930s, in quite good shape and mostly original. This is the Allisonola logo underneath of the player roll. I just think that name is pretty funny and wanted to put a picture of it here. And here's some more close-ups of the player mechanism. Now keep in mind that the bellows, which you're not seeing yet, but the bellows have been completely redone, but everything else in here is all original. Here's a close-up of these, I think they're called bushed bearings, but I'm not 100% sure. It's part of the player mechanism. Here's some of the rubber tubes that are used to, move compressed air around, and those have all been replaced about 25 years ago. This is a close-up of those things. The wooden surfaces of this motor. If the bushed bearing should squeak, use unsalted beef tallow and not oil, which is very strange. Here's the underside of the piano, the underneath parts, and you can see some of those bellows. And here's some close-ups of the Allison logo that I love so much. There's a few different angles of it. Look at the blue felt behind the keys. And the keys themselves are the original key tops, which is pretty neat because they have a nice tactile feel, and they are in very nice condition. So, as I said, we have tuned 1.5 notes. And what do I mean by 1.5 notes? Well, with a piano that hasn't been tuned in a long time, and this can be true for either a piano with brand new strings or a piano like this that hasn't been tuned in a long time, the steel strings will be stretched when you tune them. They'll have a lot of tension. And because they're not used to having that much tension on them, they'll want to shrink back. And that is true for, like I said, both a piano with brand new strings and a piano like this that hasn't been tuned in a long time. So when you first tune a piano that hasn't been tuned in a long time, it's immediately going to go flat again. Immediately, like instantly after you tune the note, it's going to go flat again. So we have tuned middle C twice, and we have tuned middle C sharp once. So middle C sharp is a little bit more out of tune than middle C, and even middle C is definitely not perfect, but those two notes are definitely close enough to be able to tell that this piano, although all original, doesn't have a bad tone. It really doesn't. Like, it actually sounds pretty nice, and you might be wondering, why didn't you tune more of the piano? Well, because you have to tune each note twice, it's going to take twice as long, and we'd probably be here for 3.5 hours just tuning the piano if you wanted to do the entire register. And we don't want to take up that much of this person's time. So we just tuned 2 notes, but because a lot of people seem to get some humor out of it, I will play a little bit of music on the rest of the piano in its glorious out-of-tune state. But of course, you would be able to make the rest of the piano sound just as good as these 2 notes with enough time. You know it's out of tune when even ragtime doesn't sound good and is barely recognizable. But again, when I say it doesn't sound good, the only reason for that is just because the piano is out of tune. You can hear that the C and the slightly out of tune C sharp actually sound pretty nice. So, with that out of the way, that is pretty much everything that I wanted to say about this Allison London piano. It's actually a really neat instrument, and with its all original state on the inside, original hammers, original dampers, all original strings except for one that was probably replaced 25 years ago, all original tuning pins, all original pin block, all original everything except the bellows and the hydraulic hoses, with all original everything and a beautiful cabinet to match. It would make a really interesting restoration project, I think, for someone who wanted to get into learning how to replace and build pianos. What's kind of cool about it, that you probably have seen in the pictures, and this isn't true for all player pianos, the tuning pins are still accessible behind all of the player mechanisms. In some big, grand player pianos, and even some in this same form factor, the tuning pins are hidden deep behind all of the complex mechanisms used to make the piano play itself. And that essentially means that if you wanted to get in there and tune, you'd have to take everything apart, and it would be a nightmare, but that's not true with this. Even the highest notes can still be reached with simply a tuning hammer and not having to take any pieces out of the piano. You will be a little bit more cramped face than normal, but you still are able to get back there and put your tuning pin on put your tuning hammer on the tuning pins and get your mutes in between the strings, so you'd be able to fully tune this piano. I just decided not to because it would take a lot of time, and I don't want to take all that time away from the gentleman who's allowed me to come in here and make this video of the piano. Another feature of player pianos from this time period is that they have a little secret compartment here that's a little bit more secret than this one up here. A lot of people don't know it's there, and even I always forget it's there until I accidentally make it move. So on here are some controls for the playback. You've got your tempo lever, which you can actually see move here. So the tempo lever adjusts the tempo of the music that's playing back, and then you also have the soft pedal lever, which I would imagine is probably moving. Yes, it is moving the same thing that the soft pedal would do. So when you push the soft pedal, the left pedal of an upright piano, it takes the hammers and moves them closer to the string, which makes the hammers gain less velocity as they travel towards the string and results in a quieter sound. So if you were playing this instrument and you wanted to make it a little bit quieter, you could either probably push the left pedal down while it's playing or simply use this lever. There's also a button here that says soft treble, both down for solo, and then also soft bass. So I don't know exactly what those do. They might only be functional when the piano has air pressure in it, because they seem to be buttons like that. And then also you have a sustaining pedal, which to the sounds of it is raising the dampers off of the string, just like the damper pedal does on a piano. It's interesting that the right pedal is the damper and the left pedal is the soft pedal, but here the right lever is the damper pedal and the right lever is the soft pedal. So they're swapped from your normal position on the pedals. But that's another little feature of this instrument that has some playback controls, which is kind of cool. And that has been my review of this Allison London instrument, which is very cool and is not something you often see every day. But there is one more thing I wanted to talk about. But wait, there's more. And in fact, there actually is more inside of this cabinet. And these are a bunch of rolls. So if someone were to come pick up this piano, it would come with a full cabinet of these rolls. So essentially, these rolls are what you saw already installed in the piano. Inside of each one of these is a paper roll, just like we saw. So each one of these is filled with a paper roll, and you have a wide variety of different types of music to play on the instrument. You've got one called Elmer's Tune, and this one's called Release Me, and this one's Goodnight Sweetheart, and this one sounds pretty fun, The Old Piano Roll Blues. That one sounds pretty cool to me. So you have a whole cabinet of rolls and songs that can go with the player piano. And the case, I don't know if it's original, probably not, probably didn't come with the case, but the case does very closely match the finish of the piano, so it looks like it does belong with the piano. And I also don't know if the bench is original, but once again, the wood finish does match that of the piano. It's kind of interesting because the wood bench actually is tilted forwards a little bit, and I've never seen that before, but I would imagine that's because when you fold down the pedals, which can fold down here, and you want to pump them, you would essentially, it takes some energy to pump them, so maybe the angled bench would help with that, perhaps. Again, I don't know if it's original, but it seems to be custom made for something, and probably this piano. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this little review here of the Allison London piano. It's been forever since I reviewed an acoustic piano, so thank you very much to the kind guy who let me come into his house and review his piano. So thank you very much. Thanks to all of you folks for watching, and if you enjoyed it, you might want to go check out the rest of my channel, and if you do that, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.